You expect problems in Washington, D.C. because of the Democrat president and the Democrat Senate. You don't expect it in Missouri, where we have a supermajority in both the House and Senate. Why then are they growing government bigger? Where is that spirit of 1776? Because I'll tell you, when this country was founded, we didn't have political parties. They're not anywhere in the Constitution. The political parties became a union-type methodology of creating voting blocks, money, and power. And I refuse to be part of a system that is so badly corrupted now that it's really what the lobbyists want. I've never seen more citizen input on this special session with both the Mosira bill and the China hub, and they turned a deaf ear to it. And if we can't look at that and see what's happening, here's the point. I could have stayed in the fancy car, which is the Republican Party, and gone right off the edge of the cliff. Or I could drive a more modest car and go the direction I want to go. And what the Constitution Party allows me to do is survive to the November election. Because what's happening right now is conservatives are losing their races. Maybe things are going well down here in the Springfield area, but statewide and nationwide, all the conservatives are tending to get wiped away in the August primary. And then come November, you have a choice between bad and worse, or Larry and Moe. And we're not happy with having to pick from the wolf or the wolf in sheep's clothing. We need to have a real choice on the ballot. And if I go on to the November contest, then we get to have a real debate. Then we get to talk about the issues that really matter, like why are you growing government bigger? Why are you bloating the budget? And why do you think I don't know or care? Because we are noticing and we do care. To tell you one little illustration, I put one of my last son in public school this year. Mm-hmm. Day one, he came home with a piece of paper that says the school is required by Missouri state law to ask if my family has medical insurance or not. And I was stunned by the brazenness of it, because that's none of their business. They are an educational institution, not a healthcare institution.
No, so, Cynthia, and the letter said that the state of Missouri required that you tell them.
Right, and it said it was a bill passed by the General Assembly in 2010, although they didn't give the bill number. So I picked up the phone, called the Capitol, and asked, pray tell, what was that bill number? Because I was in the General Assembly in 2010, and when they gave it to me, I looked it up and found out I was one of only 9 legislators who voted against it. Come on, what is the deal with that? I'm telling you, that's how misguided. Not to complain to you guys. I'm just trying to point out the facts are the facts. Government has become more intrusive. Maybe you're not feeling it, but look at the pro-life issue right there. I'm going to be the only pro-life candidate choice you're going to have on the ballot.
This is absolutely incredible that, as you said, Republicans, supposedly conservative Republicans, are voting for and supporting a school system really bullying that people get health care by mandating that every student has their parents fill out a document verifying that they do. That is moving more and more towards Obama's health care and the mandate. And as we said earlier, both the Republicans and the Democrats are pushing this national health care thing, and you and I both know it's set up for control. This is a passive way that our legislators, who we trust, are doing things under the radar that really promote their agenda of using health care to eventually take away our freedoms. Folks, I want you to think about that for just a moment. Cynthia, prior to going into the break, you talked about what the Constitution Party actually was and how it is giving you an opportunity, and through you, the citizens of the state of Missouri, an opportunity to actually now have a real choice, not just a bad or less than bad, but an actual choice here if you can get on the ballot. And that's what's so important for this state to understand. We need to have another option as opposed to the current parties that are really moving us further and further away from the Constitution. And I know, Cynthia, changing gears just a little bit, we've been big proponents here on the show about more and more state sovereignty. And I know that when you were a member of the representatives down in Jeff City, you in fact sponsored the state sovereignty bill for the state of Missouri.
I did, and I also sponsored the Firearms Freedom Act.
Amen.
And the Light Bulb Freedom Act. And
isn't that unbelievable? We got to do this with light bulbs.
It's the premise. Yes, we do have to do it with light bulbs because the national government has just dictated what kind of light bulbs can be sold in America. So my bill said if the light bulbs are made in Missouri and used in Missouri, then it's none of their business. And I knew if we could get that passed, then the philosophy would transfer to everything else, including more specifically guns. So I did ask the chairman of the committee who was going to hear the Firearms Freedom Act, what do I need to do to get a hearing on this? And he said, well, let's do light bulb freedom first. Although, don't you wonder, why are we having to do it? And that's my point. If you're so enamored with the Republican Party, then explain to me why they can't get that done. So, I mean, here's the point. We have to stand up, we have to be brave, and we have to call it the truth out. And I will be a conscience for both parties. And that's why Lieutenant Governor is such a great spot, because it's the perfect place for somebody from another party to hold the other two parties accountable. Right now, what they've got is such an ingrown relationship that they stay together and they pass big government laws. And going back for a second to that paper my son brought home from school, and he said I had to say if we've got medical insurance or not. And the part about it that bothered me the most is when I did call the staff at the Capitol and I asked, why do you need to know that? And they said, because they'll go out and recruit people. If you don't have insurance, then they put you on a list to get you signed up for Medicaid. Now, that should scare all of us because Big Brother keeps getting bigger. And frankly, Big Brother is so obese right now, if he doesn't go on a diet, we're going to die of a heart attack.
So the schools are helping grow the rolls for Medicaid.
They are actively, and that's with
Yes.
their staff time and the local expense of paper and the time to process all that. But the main thing I want to remind you of is the squatter's law. Years ago, if people sat on your property for a number of years, they could keep it if nobody ever disputed it. And that is exactly what is going on with the federal government. They have been squatting on our rights for so many years, and the state sat back and let them do it, and nobody said anything. So it finally became time to stand up and say, no, you're wrong, and I will hold you accountable for the wrongness of your actions. Now, I'm a nice lady, but when I was in 7th grade, there was another young girl who liked to trip me in the hallway. And my mother taught me all my life, always be nice. Don't hit, punch, kick, scratch, nothing of that. So when somebody was being, let's say, behaving in an unladylike manner, I just let her do it. And then seriously, I came home in distress every day. It's time for the country to stop wringing our hands and being in distress every day because they're being a big bully to us. And the only way to contain a bully is to stand up to the bully.
Yep.
There was one day she tripped me in the hallway, and I don't know what happened next, but it all became a blur. And we both went to the principal's office where the principal called my mother, and my mother was never more proud. And that girl left me alone ever since.
Cynthia, you're exactly right. We have to stand up to the federal government, and I'll use a quote from one of our founding fathers before we go ahead and handle Larry, who's on the line waiting for a call from Polk County, and that is that when the government is afraid of the people, you have democracy. When the citizens are afraid of the government, you have tyranny.
That's very good. Can I just remind you of one more
Sure.
piece of legislation I sponsored, because it really does reveal the mentality of where we are in this state?
Sure.
When I went through my concealed license permit class, we had to read the law. And most legislators haven't really studied it in depth like you would if you went through the class. But while we were studying it, I got to this section that said it was prohibited to have guns in churches. And that hit me all wrong on many levels. It's not even just should we have guns in churches, but church property does not belong to the government.
Sure.
It's wrong of government to say what we can and cannot do with guns on our own private property. And so I filed a bill that said, that just simply took out the prohibitions from churches. And the shocking part for me is, to me, that was a no-brainer because it competes with another part of law. So you could even call it a housekeeping measure. We couldn't even get that done. And they said, well, we're afraid that we don't want to open it up and have people discuss it. And I'm like, wait a minute. If we're having so much progress in the legislature, why don't we talk about reality and right and wrong? And we've got all the good arguments on our side. We have no reason to be cowards here.
No, and as you said, we need to stand up against the bullies to win back our rights. For a long time, under the radar, politicians in both parties have been encroaching upon our freedoms guaranteed to us by the Constitution, and we have allowed them because we either did not know or we were not diligent. Okay, the cost of freedom is eternal vigilance, and we were not vigilant. And because of that, they have gotten so far away from the Constitution, both parties have, that persons like Cynthia Davis have chosen to run on a third-party ticket to bring us more and more back to the Constitution.
I just wanted to say that the problem is we've gotten lazy, too. Do you know that 30% of all NRA members aren't even registered to vote? I mean, they would love it if we would just do the right thing and take care of the laws for them. But, you know, here's the point. I love talking to a police officer because when I was in the O'Fallon city government, I went through the Citizens Police Academy.
Yep.
And the one rule that I got from it was it's the duty of the police officer to always be in control of the situation. And I would like to remind you, it's the duty of the citizens to always be in control of how the things are working up. If the laws are stacking against us, we need to hold them accountable. We need to push back, and we need to say, we're not going to let you take away our rights.
Cynthia, Thomas Jefferson, the cost of freedom is eternal vigilance.
Now, I want to correct you on one small thing. You said it's a third party, but because the Republicans and Democrats are so closely aligned, I call it a second party. It's time for us to get a second party, and history will record with the greatest astonishment what happens when people actually have a choice on the ballot.
I'm looking forward to it.
You're listening to The Gun Show with Matt Canovi on 104.1 KSGF, Springfield's only News Talk FM. Here's Matt Canovi.
Welcome back to The Gun Show. We're in the downside of today's show, and we've only got a few minutes left. I've been interviewing Cynthia Davis, former 8-year Missouri Republican state representative from O'Fallon, Missouri, and currently the candidate for the Missouri Lieutenant Governor's position, running on the Constitution Party ticket. Cynthia, we've only got a few minutes left. What do you want to leave my listeners?
I want to tell you to be brave. Be brave, be bold, do the right thing. Your listeners already know what's the right thing. But the main thing is you won't feel a bit of difference between the Republicans and Democrats when it comes to the lieutenant governor's race. I want your people to come join me. Sign up for votecynthia.com because votecynthia.com is my website. You can read everything. You can see pictures of me with my gun. The Joplin blogs love using that picture, and I think that's hilarious because they're afraid it will scare all the suburban housewives when they see me at the shooting range, but really it shows that we're doing well. We have to look at our values. Don't judge the candidate by the words he says, because most of them are pandering politicians. They've got enough studies to show what they have to say to get elected. But look at your own values and pick who's going to match up with the values that made us strong. You know, Missouri is a very freedom-loving state, and we have to prove a point to the rest of the nation that we do care about life, liberty, and property. And this is our chance to make a difference. So go to votecynthia.com